November 19th, 1988 was a wonderful fall morning and the first Thanksgiving day off. Two best friends were enthusiastically strolling towards a supermarket not too far from their homes. It was their first trip without adult control, and for the two friends, it was a big step toward independence. Little did both of them know, a predator prowled in the shadows, going to transform their most joyful memory into a horrible nightmare. Loaded with exciting bends in the road, this case stays one of the most fascinating secrets within recent memory. Hello and welcome to Friday 13 Crime, where we cover solved, unsolved, and twisted cases. Today we bring a profound plunge into the mysterious disappearance of Michaela Garecht. Known as the heart of the Bay, Hayward, California is the central point to other cities in the East Bay area. Its occupants are depicted as having a ton of adoration and local area soul, and its rural energy makes it an optimal spot to live for families. With the second most different populace in California, Hayward is essentially as welcoming as its people. Hayward is home to the wonderful Cal State University. Also in 1988, Michaela Garecht and her family called it home. Michaela was brought into the world on January 24, 1979 in Oakland, California. Although it was struggle to convince Michaela her parents called her blessing, as soon after her birth they welcomed another daughter, Libby, and a son, Alex. In 1986, they took the action to Hayward, where they chose to put down roots and raise their developing family. Michaela was depicted as a brilliant and energetic kid. She was respectful and paid attention to all that her folks told her. Sharon was depicted as an extremely mindful mother, here and there viewed as overprotective. She'd ensured her kids were constantly kept near and dear and by no means meandered far without grown-up oversight. However, nobody could fault her. The 1980s saw an expansion in youngster kidnappings, especially in the California region. It was a Saturday morning, November 19, 1988. Michaela had quite recently completed the process of having breakfast with her family when her dearest companion, 9-year-old Katrina Rodriguez, approached to inquire as to whether she and Michaela could go down to the nearby supermarket to purchase snacks. The reaction was at first a firm no. Upset, however not hindered, Michaela asked and begged her mom, promising they'd be protected, and returned rapidly. Realizing her daughter planned to grow up at some point or another, Sharon yielded and permitted them to go while reminding them to watch out. She gave Michaela $5 and the young ladies enthusiastically got their scooters. Michaela went to Sharon and said, "I love you, Mother," before they advanced down the block and carefully concealed. As Sharon watched them go, her husband, Rod, chose to go out and accomplish some work on the car, while Sharon returned in to clear up the morning meal dishes, ignorant that in the following couple of minutes, her life planned to change for eternity. Michaela and Katrina energetically rode their bikes toward the Rainbow Market on Mission Boulevard, stopping their bikes simply before the store. The two young ladies advanced inside to get a few tidbits. In the wake of purchasing 2 Mountain Dew soft drinks, 2 sticks of hamburger jerky, and 2 bits of cherry taffy, they left the store, totally overlooking their bikes as they visited about plans for the occasion. Before they could leave the parking area, however, the two young ladies understood their bikes were still external the store. One was missing, and Michaela and Katrina chose to separate to track down the other bike. Michaela spotted it first. It had been moved around 3 parking spots away and left close to a vehicle. Automatically, Michaela went to the bike and twisted down to grasp the handlebars. In a brief moment, a man had leaped out of the vehicle and snatched Michaela around the midriff prior to pushing her into his car. Like a deer in the headlights, Katrina stood stuck to the spot as she heard her companion's shouts and watched her battle in the abductor's hold. The man stripped out of the parking spot prior to speeding out on Mission Boulevard, making a beeline for Union City. Katrina quickly ran once again into the store and told the clerk, Rona Ronalyn, that Michaela had recently been grabbed. Rona called the neighborhood police, who showed up in record time to the crime location. She additionally reached Katrina's dad and let him know what simply occurred at the store. Back at their home, Sharon was in the middle of cleaning up the dishes when she heard mad yelling from an external perspective. Rod, her husband, burst through the front entryway, telling her Michaela had quite recently been seized external the Rainbow Market. Alongside Katrina's dad, they advanced down to the store to find police amassing the region and addressing clients and staff from the store. Katrina was sad and was permitted to return home with her dad. Rod and Sharon stayed behind, wanting to find a few solutions. Be that as it may, From profound inside, a seed of dread flourished as Sharon recalled a poem Michaela had written. Sharon recalled a disrupting occurrence simply 7 days sooner. She'd awakened to find Michaela finding a seat at the morning meal table, writing in the early hours of the morning. At the point when she asked her what she was doing, Michaela told her mom she was writing a poem, however was being dubious. Sharon continued to ask her what was going on with the poem, and Michaela said she awakened in the wake of hearing clamors coming from the storage room and contemplated individuals who had been hijacked and locked away in the loft. She then, at that point, let Sharon know that her poem was about individuals who were seized and being held hostage, not individuals who were captured and killed. Sharon, at that point, tracked down it rather unpropitious that a youngster as lively as Michaela would compose a poem like this. Thinking back now, she accepted Michaela might have composed the poem as a sort of prediction or hunch. Rona, the clerk, was luckily ready to recollect the one who supposedly took Michaela. She portrayed him to police as a white male in his 30s with a mustache. She had the option to make out the shade of the vehicle as being either burgundy or maroon, yet couldn't give them insights concerning the make or model. Rona let police know that the man had left his vehicle and got out yet not entered the store. All things considered, he hid outwardly and glanced through the window, watching the young ladies and different clients. She likewise had an inclination he was anticipating, perhaps ransacking the store. A sketch craftsman immediately drew a composite sketch and circled the image to all police headquarters nearby and media sources. Investigators tracked down the bike and took it in as proof. From the bike handle, they had the option to lift a dormant hand-shaped impression. The print was recorded to be utilized to recognize the kidnapper. Yet past that, there were not many signs they could circle back to. Toward the finish of the main day after the kidnapping, the FBI joined the examination concerning Michaela's snatching. Given the new spate of kidnappings, the FBI made certain there probably been a few connection between Michaela's vanishing and that of the other missing youngsters. Notwithstanding, police before long understood that Katrina might have the option to give a smidgen more data on the suspect, as she was the vital observer to the snatching. 2 days after the episode, investigators visited Katrina's family home and, along with her folks, plunked down and addressed her. What she uncovered had investigators faltering. The depiction of the kidnapper was radically unique to the one given by the store clerk. Katrina depicted the man just like a white male in his mid-20s with long, brownish hair. She said he had serious skin inflammation that scarred his face and depicted his eyes was blue. Katrina recalled his eyes specifically and told agents he had fox eyes. He took a gander at me, yet didn't see me. She additionally let investigators know that his car had been either beige or tan, box-molded, with apparent body harm. This new portrayal was unsettling, as agents understood the most vital 48 hours had passed while they were searching for some unacceptable individual. The banners were reproduced with the new suspect's picture and rearranged in order to have the option to earn new leads. With the new data, however, investigators presently started thumping the cases of all sex wrongdoers. Volunteers turned out in their numbers, thumping on entryways and giving out banners that incorporated a portrayal of Michaela's garments: white shirt with the word Metro composed across it, moved up blue denim pants, dark Mary Jane shoes, and pearl-shaded feather-formed studs. At the point when nobody announced any indications of Michaela anyplace in the close-by rural areas, police stretched out the inquiry to incorporate the Garecht Public Park and Niles Ravine that were only minutes from the Garecht family home. This search started following a tip from 3 climbers who purportedly saw impressions in the forested region having a place with 1 grown-up and 1 youngster. After they'd followed the tracks, they tracked down a sweeping and void inexpensive food compartments. A mental profile likewise ruffian was probably going to take Michaela to a separated region. Helicopters were fitted with infrared warm cameras to get any indications of an intensity signature inside the thick lush regions. Cops looked through riding a horse and foot. This large number of endeavors yielded no outcomes. Michaela had evaporated alongside her kidnapper immediately and inexplicably. Michaela's vanishing arrived at the public news. Her story was highlighted on Unsolved Mysteries. What's more, was one of the primary kidnappings to highlight on America's generally cared about. Her face was imprinted on milk containers, and the Missing Youngsters program printed north of 50 million mailing cards to homes around the country with pictures of Michaela, a portrayal of her garments, and a composite sketch of the kidnapper. San Francisco 49ers quarterback Joe Montana showed up to openly endorse the Garecht family and made an allure for people in general to offer any clues. A prize asset of $70,000 was posted during this time for any data with respect to Michaela's whereabouts. Inside the principal year of her vanishing, police had gotten about 5,000 tips, the vast majority of which ended up being bits of hearsay. In any case, nobody was prepared to surrender. Sharon herself followed leads, some extending similar to Russia, yet nothing yielded any outcomes. It would require an additional 4 years before investigators got another tip that they accepted could be genuine. In that time, more than 15,000 tips were gotten and police were gripping at everyone, trusting it could reveal insight into the missing young lady's case. Somewhere in the range of 1991 and 1992, a prisoner in Indiana offered clues in regards to Michaela's vanishing. Roger Huggard, who was carrying out long-term punishment for a thievery charge, claimed that he assisted a companion with covering her body in a gladiolus field in Union City. Nonetheless, investigators were not at first intrigued, accepting it might have been a totally pointless pursuit. At the point when Huggard understood the agents were not viewing his cases in a serious way, he rather went to the media. He composed a letter in 1992 to the San Francisco Chronicle professing to realize who hijacked Michaela and where she'd been covered. He vowed to lead investigators to her body. The media consideration and public objection constrained specialists to fly fatigued to California to affirm before a grand jury. Having sworn to tell the truth, Huggard rehashed the cases he'd been making to investigators. Huggard vowed to lead agents not exclusively to Michaela's remaining parts, yet to the home of the supposed killer. The following day, fatigued, alongside a group of investigators, looked through the field that he guaranteed Michaela's body had been covered in. In a stunning turn, following 8 hours of serious looking, Huggard supposedly let police know that he'd misleaded the investigators and let them know that he purportedly needed to give the Garecht family a feeling of harmony after so long. Huggard was accused of prevarication and condemned to additional 6 years in jail and requested to pay Michaela's family $6,000 in penalties for giving them misleading expectation. Each new lead was going to bring investigators down a hazier way than they'd envisioned. Someone else of interest had for quite some time been on police radar in 1991. Timothy Binder was a 43-year-old sewage treatment plant worker. He was hitched with a family, yet investigators were warned by parents in the East Bay area about Binder's unpleasant way of behaving. Parents affirmed that he'd been sending little kids gifts in cash to draw nearer to them. A portion of the letters were supposedly composed in reverse and must be perused by utilizing a mirror. Investigators looked through Binder's experience and found that he drove a light blue van with a tag that read, "Love you." Within his van was supposedly covered with pictures of young kids, pastel drawings, and Book of Scripture stanzas. As indicated by reports, he'd been captured for endeavoring to bait 2 little kids into his van, however the charges were dropped. Binder, investigators found, had a talent for embedding himself into the cases encompassing missing youngsters. He had connected with Michaela's mom, Sharon, following her vanishing in November of 1988. Preceding that, he'd likewise connected with Kim Schwartz, the mother of 7-year-old Amber Schwartz, who disappeared in June of that very year. The 2 moms purportedly told police they didn't have a nice sentiment about Binder, and that he continued reaching them with respect to the improvements in the 2 cases. In a shocking happenstance, Binder had composed a letter to the police after Amber had kidnapped. In the letter, he guaranteed that the following kid to disappear would be a 9-year-old young lady, and strangely, Michaela was the following kid detailed missing. Toward the beginning of December, Binder likewise sent a Christmas card to a FBI profiler with an image of a young lady holding up 4 fingers. On December 27, 1991, Amanda Campbell, who was matured 4, disappeared from her home in Fairfield. Binder was likewise connected to the vanishing of 13-year-old Eileen Misch from Dublin in California. In a new development, his by and large odd way of behaving and interest in these cases began to earn him media consideration. His name had become inseparable from the new spate of kid kidnappings, and individuals betrayed him. Binder and his family were being irritated by the public, who needed deals with serious consequences regarding every one of the kidnappings. He ultimately sued the city of Fairfield for maligning and won the case. Examiners in the long run dialed down on Binder, with a large number of the assessment that all he needed to do was assume a significant part in the investigation. Underneath every one of the secrets, The case kept on enthralling the general population and challenged the specialists. Curtis Dean Anderson had additionally gone under examination following his catch and capture in August of 2000. Following his capture, Anderson confessed to the snatching and murder of 7-year-old Ziana Fairchild from Vallejo, California in 1999. In a 2007 meeting with the FBI, Anderson professed to have killed another 13 women and girls. He likewise claimed to have stole and killed 7-year-old Amber Schwartz, who he saw alone on a traffic intersection. Before he could furnish investigators with more data, however, he kicked the bucket on December 9, 2007 from kidney and liver disappointment. Specialists investigated Anderson's experience after his admission about killing numerous young ladies from quite a while ago. Records show that 1989, while driving a brown 1977 Chevy car that matched the vehicle depiction given by Katrina too. Nonetheless, his demise left investigators incapable to test that line of investigation. However, trust wasn't lost. The re-established exertion of specialists brought Michaela's seizing once again into the spotlight, and with it, more consideration and new leads. Another turn comes in August 2012. Wesley Shermantine, who was one portion of the deadly pair known as the Speed Freaks, reached the Stockton record following the self-destruction of his sidekick Lauren Herzog in January of that year. He directed out that Herzog looked similar toward the composite of the suspect for Michaela's situation. This was fortified by Katrina's remarks that Herzog had highlights that seemed to be the one who hijacked Michaela. At the course of Shermantine, investigators started uncovering a well in Linden, California, where the duo supposedly discarded their victims. Huge number of bone sections were found, some of which were accepted to have a place with Michaela. While the specialists never left any desire for settling the case, the secret continued to bewilder them further. 8 additional years would pass before investigators could track down a promising lead. The occasions that occurred during this wrongdoing were really surprising. On December 21, 2020, the Hayward Police Division and FBI reported that they'd made a capture on account of Michaela. David Misch, who was 61 years of age starting around 2022, was accused of the abducting and murder of Michaela after his fingerprints were connected utilizing new innovation.
We can announce that 59-year-old David Misch has been charged with the murder of Michaela Garecht. He is in custody at Santa Rita Jail, here in Alameda County.
Not much is realized about his life growing up. Yet, when he was 16, he had previously started his life of wrongdoing. In 1977, Misch was sentenced for breaking and entering a property and physically attacking a housekeeper at knife point. He was captured, however, was paroled just a year after the fact in 1978. In February 1979, he was captured on charges of bogus detainment and attack with a dangerous weapon. Those charges were subsequently refreshed to attack with goal to assault. Yet again, he would fit the bill for parole in September 1981. May 1988, he was captured for robbery at a San Leandro supermarket and condemned to 1 year in jail and 1 year probation. He was delivered a half year after the fact in November of that very year. Karma at last found him in December 1988. 38-year-old Margaret Ball was quite a while companion of Misch, who frequently helped him out in a predicament. It unsure happened between the two, however. Margaret was found by her stepdaughter, beaten and cut to death in a pool of blood. The beating was extreme to the point that her front tooth was found a couple of feet from her body. Police were alerted to Misch as the suspect, as they would later find evidence linking him to the crime. He was arrested and convicted of Margaret's murder. He was sentenced to 18 years to life in 2018, while he was still incarcerated for Margaret Ball's murder. DNA evidence linked Misch to another double homicide in Fremont, California in 1986. 18-year-old Michelle Xavier and her best friend, 20-year-old Jennifer Dewey, went out to celebrate a birthday dinner of a family member on February 2, 1986. After leaving the restaurant, the young women drove to a convenience store before going home. Shortly after midnight, though, a motorcyclist found both women's bodies on the side of the road. They were stripped naked, and they'd been stabbed and shot. For later, an autopsy revealed that they were also sexually assaulted. Michelle's car was found 6 miles from the crime scene in the parking lot of a grocery store. The case was highly publicized, and rewards were offered, but over the years, all leads and tips would fizzle out, and the case went cold. 32 years later, DNA technology would lead detectives to David Misch. David Misch was charged with another 3 counts of murder and 1 for abduction as he serves out his current sentence. Alameda District Attorney Nancy O'Alley said that Misch had been charged with murder and 2 special circumstances. If found guilty, he could be given a death sentence. Hayward Police Chief Tony Chaplin said the disappearance of Michaela was a tragic story that gripped the Bay Area for decades. He said they were not going to stop the search for Michael's body and remains hopeful that they'll find her. Michaela's father, Rod Garecht, drove over 100 miles to attend the press conference. Rod said he finds some relief knowing Misch has been identified after all these years. "I'm kind of relieved that they caught someone over it. So now I don't gotta, they've got a suspect they can grill, and hopefully he'll cough up wherever the body is," he said. Sharon, who'd been diagnosed with metastatic cancer back in 2019, was unable to attend the press conference. Police Chief Tony Chaplin read a statement on her behalf. "In the last year, I had to come to a place of acceptance that Michaela was probably no longer alive. But somehow, that acceptance was far more wrapped up in the idea of Michaela sitting on a fluffy thin cloud, walking on streets of gold, dancing on grassy hills, soaring among the stars. What I did not envision was my daughter as a dead child. It was only when I heard this news that this vision of reality appeared. And I've honestly not figured out what to do with it." Misch's attorney, Ernie Castillo, has been outspoken about the case involving his client. He blasted the investigation, calling the methods used to charge Misch as junk science. He said that the sudden match of the handprint after 32 years just seemed ridiculous. Castillo insists that the police are trying to pin all the blame on Misch as an easy way to close the case. Now, a middle-aged woman, Katrina Rodriguez, who married and moved away from Hayward to Texas, still harbors guilt over what happened that fateful Saturday morning. In her mind, it was meant to be her, because the scooter that was moved belonged to Katrina. This burden of guilt has driven Katrina to forget her childhood. For Sharon, she dedicated her entire life to finding Michaela. First, she waited at the door or the telephone, and as the years passed, she turned to the internet, searching. Sharon eventually started a blog called Dear Michaela. Later, she changed it to Seeker's Road. Sharon was eventually diagnosed with cancer, and after Misch was charged with Michaela's murder, the fight slowly faded out of her. She knew she would see her daughter soon. Sharon passed away in May 2022. There was one last twist to come in this already puzzling case. As David Misch awaits trial on the charges of kidnapping and murder in the case of Michaela Garecht and the murders of Michelle Xavier and Jennifer Dewey, new Alameda County District Attorney Pamela Price created a ripple among those who had been invested in seeing David Misch pay for his crimes. Price has drawn criticism after making the decision to drop all special circumstances in the 3 killings. If convicted of all 3 counts of murder, Misch no longer faces life in prison without parole or the death penalty. After waiting 3 decades to see Misch pay for his crimes, family, friends, and supporters for Michaela might have to face the reality that Misch could get away with his crimes without facing the appropriate justice. Child safety advocate Michael Klaas, who's the father of Polly Klaas, who was abducted and killed in 1993, said it was a complete and utter betrayal. Retired Fremont Lieutenant Chuck Kohler, who worked on the 1986 Michelle Xavier and Jennifer Dewey murders, for which Misch has also been charged, said, "I think there's exceptions to every rule. And if anybody ever deserved maximum punishment, it's David Misch." David Misch awaits trial on 3 charges of murder and 1 of kidnapping. The case of Michaela Garecht has been a story filled with twists and turns that began with a case of mistaken identity that cost law enforcement the first crucial 48 hours of the investigation. It kept a family grasping at straws for decades. And now it may give an alleged killer the opportunity to deny any involvement and keep the truth of a little girl's body's whereabouts a mystery. What do you think of the case? Do you believe David Misch is responsible for the kidnapping and possible murder of Michaela? Or has he been used as a scapegoat? Did investigators make too many errors along the way? Let us know in the comments below. As always, stay safe until next time.